Kevin and Ashley, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you with us for your legacy author interview.
Awesome. Thanks, Walter. It's good to be here.
Thanks so much, Walter. Good to meet you in person.
Absolutely. And we loved your article, AIELOC, International Agents of Change. It's so aptly named. And, in full disclosure, I've known Kevin for I can't believe it's been 11 years. But Kevin, I remember this. We were actually in Atlanta at a conference, and we sat down and talked and started the conversation about, well, at that time, forming a connected community around the Gulf states, the Persian Gulf. And you're such a connector. You're always getting people together and the energy that comes from it. And so I was honored to be one of those people that experienced the magic of Kevin Simpson firsthand. But since then, the two of you, talk to me about AIELOC and how that kind of emerged from all this work that you've been doing around the world and how we got from there to here.
Yeah, I'll jump in here first, Ashley. And first, Ashley was one of our first ALOC interns. So let's go back and just sort of so people know what
Yeah,
AIELOC stands for. So
thank
ALOC,
you.
for short, stands for the Association of International Educators and Leaders of Color. It was given birth 8 years ago in 2017. Again, like you said, Walter, there was a lot of conversations that happened behind the scenes.
Yeah,
I was a sponsor for a young lady who she was pursuing becoming a head of an international school. And so as a sponsor, I would check in with her, every couple times a month to see how her progress she was making, how it was going, any support I can give, see if there's any people I knew in the ecosystem who I can connect her with, how her interview's going. And so one day we checked in and she said, yeah, I was told by one group that I shouldn't apply for the job. They want a white British man. And I was like,
ouch,
what? Like
man.
directly told you that? So
Yeah,
I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. And
uh-uh.
I just went on this sort of question journey of asking others about because I was removed then. So I was consulting, so I was away from the international school space. And so I was like, is this like this is what's happened to someone? Is this what's going on? And everybody was like confirming, like, yes, I've been told my hijab, I've been told my religion, I've been told I'm from here, I'm this,
Yep,
or I'm a woman, I'm black. It was a list, basically.
right, right.
And so I mean, you sit with that, and it's like you either allow it to persist or you do something about it.
Yep.
And so, literally set up a Facebook group as a affinity space, which is still is to this day. Invited some folks into conversation again around this, and that led to the association being set up a couple years later, 2019, with the focus and the goal of amplifying the stories and the voices of those who historically had not been seen in international schools. So a lot
Right.
of folks that would identify as, Black, multiracial, Asian, a person of color, Latine, but again, thinking about intersectionality too, how those will intersect with other identities, and focus on really three things. Focus on learning, so be very determined and be very focused on our own learning, the way that we learn are the things we need to relearn, unlearn, learn again through like webinars, conferences, and different convenings and talks, and now meetups, which people host in different cities around the world that their own learning in their context. To
Yep.
research, so we have a whole bunch of people who are in EDD, PhD programs, who are researching topics that had never been talked about in international schools. Black women in international school leadership, just all kinds of voices, which has been great to see representation wise as well, and advocacy, which is a big one, being able to self advocate for yourself and advocating for others. And what does that actually mean? And so that's just, I guess, history. And it's just grown tremendously. And it's really been the community that has grown it. Every month we ask the community what they want to see on offer. So we did our first in-person conference in Hanoi, Vietnam in 2024. We'll be in
Right.
Bangkok in 2026. We
Right.
have a virtual conference, and we're in year 6 now. Our African international school educators have been doing like ongoing monthly events. So again, the community has really just grown it into what it is. It's been amazing, special.
And all in response to a question. I mean, that's the beauty of all of this is that, you weren't sitting around saying, "Gee, I'm looking for work. I'm looking for something to do. What can I do to generate?" No, you just asked a question, and here we are. Magic. So, Ashley, what did it mean to be an intern early on as the organization was launching?
Yeah, it was honestly great. As you know, like you said, Kevin is a connector. So, as a professional that was, I still at that point was pursuing my doctorate,
Yeah,
in higher education administration in Texas. And I think one thing that underscores this conversation is our commitment to fostering a culture of dignity, respect, and learning and
thank you.
fairness, right? And for me,
Yeah,
a bit about my background. I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging professional. Been doing this for a number of years. And AIELOC is a home for anyone who upholds these values, right?
yes.
And so it was really kind of a great fit and I think contribution to be able to sort of enlighten and continue to dialogue around where we know this is kind of a really polarizing issue right now, right, in our country. And so it's nice to find a home. It was really nice to find a home with ALOC, but also to figure out the ways in which we will continue to push on upholding those values, even in the face of the challenges that we know are at the time we're ahead and right now are right in front of us.
Ooh, so well said. And you're making me think. It's amazing how these conversations just flow. I just recently introduced someone to Kevin from Massachusetts, and he's like me. He's an old white guy. And I said, I need to connect you to ALOC. And he looked up the site and he goes, but wait a minute, I'm an old white guy. I said, no, 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 no. It's not just BIPOC. It's LGBTQ. It's so many populations that need to find their people and have a voice and make a difference. And so he was thrilled once he realized, oh, good, I can be part of this movement too. And it really is a movement. You guys really are a movement. So Ashley, let's stick with this for a minute because over the years, and again, the magic, so many people that have come into my sphere have worked with Kevin. And they're like, oh, yeah, you know Kevin. I know Kevin. Ah, I'm doing this with Kevin. So when I think of all those wonderful people, and they are all wonderful, as you meet them, is it just this sense of synchronicity that they may be in an international school in East Africa, they may be in an international school in Vietnam, and yet somehow when you connect, it's just this immediate bonding and energy and enthusiasm of we've got a lot in common, we've got work to do. For you, Ashley, how have you experienced that? How does that
Yeah,
happen?
it's sort of magical. I don't know what
Yeah,
other like term to use. I think as a professional who does like change culture with organizations, you understand that impact and change and growth feel really like slow and incremental. It doesn't feel that way at ALOC. It feels like the minute you jump into a dialogue, you're really centering and in alignment to the values that we uphold. And
yeah,
so it's easier to now start to get the work done, right? Most of the time that I spend is getting people to understand their values at ALOC because we're in alignment to those values now. We're on hitting the ground running, right? We're talking about concepts that matter. The other thing that I think is so serendipitous is that I now am in an independent school uh, s- position, right, as a senior administrator. So
yeah,
it's so cyclical that all of the things that I've learned from ALOC, all of
yeah,
the and in fact, the school that I'm at right now has such a large international student population that I'm pulling on everything that I've learned at ALOC to build relationships
yeah.
and to be a trusted adult to those students. So um, I you can ask Kevin. I text Kevin. I'm like, Kevin, what should we do about this? What work can we do here? Right? Like it's
Yeah.
always a really authentic opportunity to just engage, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. And Kevin, as she's talking, I'm smiling because all of these people I know that are connected to you and I, they all have the same story. Well, I was talking to Kevin and I said I always wanted to do this. And by the time the conversation was over, I was doing it. He said, go do it. Here's how we can connect you. And so there are all these personal, very personal success stories of people who may have been in a classroom feeling kind of isolated and wondering where their people were, or they were in an international school halfway around the world and wondering, how do I get the capacity I need to really energize my vision for this? And you have this way about you, and I'm not asking you to give away your secret sauce. And if you're like me, you wouldn't even know how to describe the secret sauce. You just are who you are. But, what is that? How does, a lot of these people are very demure. They're not go-getters. They're not setting out to burn the world down and say, I'm taking it over. But by the time they finish talking to you, they're doing things they never thought they would be able to do or could do. How do you explain that? I mean,
Yeah, I think, I think it's that whole that anything is possible. I was at the Black Male Educator convening in Atlanta this past weekend,
yes, yes,
and just again, amazing space that IOLA has built. He did like ASTD conference. I remember him doing one of the
yes,
first things he
yeah,
did with ASTD. He had a Black Male Educator convening. And it's that thing that I remember someone talking this past weekend about like things are possible. And I was on a panel for entrepreneurs. So we were
yeah,
all educators that
yes,
became entrepreneurs.
yes,
Again, that we had ideas and we pursued them. And I
yes,
think it's that. So when I see and I hear people, and they're genuine, and it's like again, it's in them and they're passionate. It's just like, do it. You got support. You got a community. It's like
yes,
who? I'm like, I bet you I know somebody who 0 degree separation. I bet you I know somebody I can link you with that will have access and that can talk to you. Just like again, the gentleman I just linked with. I was
yeah.
we already chatted, and I said I'm gonna
Oh,
check in
wonderful.
on in a week. I will
Thank you.
talk back to you in a week. And he's
Yep,
already working on his international education. Because people who are coming into the ecosystem, my new thing with them, I have 3 people I'm working with now. I
yep,
say I want you to do just like people do a what's it called, like a vision map.
yes,
Um, do that for your vision for international education, where you see
yes,
yourself, the countries, the job, the position. Visualize it, put it up, post it, and then work from there. Backwards from there. And so I think that's the big thing is like just listen to people, caring for them, being genuine,
yes,
and again, being in community, but again, letting them know that, okay, so you're interested in that, and I can name a bunch of examples who were in the
yep,
same place as you,
yep,
and it's about, we were talking about that too, and on our panel was just get started. Because a lot of people feel I have to have a loan for something, I have to have a lot of money, I have to have more time or more whatever. It's like, and I told the
yeah,
panel, like, everyone has 15 to 30 minutes every day. We all can pull out 15 to 30 minutes. I said
yep,
that's how I started my company when before I left Dubai. I took 15 to 30-ish minutes every day and set out to make sure that I was working on the next.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's such a wonderful gift to people, especially in these times where everyone feels so overwhelmed and there's so much happening. Some we didn't sign up for, some we did, but overall we're like stressed. So it's a gift to empower people that way and let them feel the possibility and the potential they have. That having been said, this is not easy work. And, I'm just sitting in Virginia in the United States and it's hard work. Attacking it globally is even bigger. So, talk to me about what you're seeing. What are the challenges people are facing? What are the opportunities? How do you think about it to keep yourselves energized and not feeling overwhelmed as another news item hits the cycle or
Yeah.
another incident happens that makes you feel like they're out to get us? There's no way
Right.
we can.
Yeah, I'll have here first, actually. So I think one of the panelists said, and I loved it on Saturday. He said self-care is about being selfish sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of times we feel like Sunday let me do self-care, Saturday do self-care. No, I practice self-care just like I practice. It's a habit.
Yes.
So making sure that that's embedded, I'm taking care of myself. And again, encouraging others as part of the community to make sure you're taking care of yourself. So when you need those breaks, that downtime, do it. Don't feel that you need to be in the know of every single thing that's going on. Just like US schools were hit in February, international schools were hit. Those lovely letters came out saying that if you are receiving funds, you cannot
Yeah.
do anything, connected to diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yeah.
And right away, you had some schools, again, from the ground and things that we heard, like, oh, we're going to go through our website, we're going to pull this stuff, we can't do this, we're going to have to pull away this, all these things, again, reactionary, not thinking long term. And
No.
so our thing, like Ashley said, come back to I'm my big thing, because I had people even come to, how's AIELOC going to survive?
Right.
Thing I said, Walter, I said, look, I'm part of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, which was founded in 1911.
Yep.
Do we all know what the social milieu was like in 1911 in the United States? you know, I'm like, we could all name all of these different organizations that were founded in times that were like Jim Crow, separate but equal, separate,
Yep.
like
Yep.
heavy policies that were like against, you know, all kinds of identity. And
Yep.
so, but for us, it's come back to your why, come back to the purpose. You know, like Ashley said earlier, come back to the why. Why do we exist?
Yeah.
Why are we here? It's
Yep.
about community. You know, and
Yep.
we held open talks, open dialogues for folks to come and have conversations. People showed up at all types of night and day, you know,
Yeah.
just to have, you know, space. We had open space for them to talk about how they're feeling, what was going on in their context. Again, just anonymous and open. But I'll be honest, our schools were like, we're continuing to do so. Our A-line school members were like, we're continuing to do the work we need to do, you
Right.
know. And we did see this group of people. I feel like there was this shift of people who didn't want to do anything weren't going to do anything anyway. Let's just keep it real, you know. And
Yep.
so, but for
Yep.
us, we're like, we're going to stay committed. We know this matters. We're not going to all of a sudden start banning books. We're not going to say, oh, can't talk about this idea. That's not happening. When we
No.
know good and well, you know, and again, the international schools, unless they had already been engaged in work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice,
Yes.
they were new as of 2020, you know. And again, you had this some schools feeling like we did that, we've arrived. But one of the top five, in a recent webinar, one of the top five topics for international schools and leaders, diversity, equity, inclusion, justice was right on there.
Yes.
So that told us everything we need to know. And again, it's not going away because we know the culture of these schools and these places, like Ashley is at, and we know that you're going to have all learners from all over the world, you know,
Right.
multilingual. And so, how do you see that as a strength and as an asset, and make sure that everyone sees themselves in these institutions? You know, it's like we can't go backwards because I'm like, I'm not going back to the way I was treated when I first, you know,
Exactly.
sort of tried to move into the international school leadership space,
Yeah.
which again is why I am so we you know we are so pushy on making sure that we have programs for those who want to become leaders of color, especially who want to start Aspiring Leaders of Color program, our new Leaders of Color program. We have our DEIJ certificate program. So we're doing these
Yeah.
leadership programs because we know again what's possible and what's needed. You know, and part of what our big need is, we need culturally competent leaders.
Yes.
We need folks that are culturally competent and practice deep empathy. You know, like we talk about deep listening, deep empathy.
Amen. Ashley, would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would add, and that was just so eloquently said,
Yes.
Kevin, is the I think the shifts and the challenges have made us even more fidelis to our work, right? It's made us actually be able to say, here's what we're actually doing, right? Instead of putting these blanket terms like diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, are we doing a particular initiative for Black males, right? Are we doing a particular? And so a part of, I think, the shift in the work in particular is also getting people to humanize things like, what does it mean to belong? We all want to belong. We all want friendships. We all want formative relationships. And so some of what I've been pushing into are less about these like hot button terms, DEIB, and more
Yeah.
about, hey, so if we want all of our students, no matter where they're from, to feel valued, centered, and like they matter, we all must contribute to a collective practice of building belonging, right? What is that, right? Getting to know folks, making it very foundational right now. I think it's really important for us to go back to the 101, deep empathy, deep listening, learning about someone else from another lens, all sort of these I think critical things that matter no matter what being a leader and what space you're in, and then knowing that that's sort of our way that we resist, because it's the work is still here even if you don't want to call it that.
It is. And you both of you are making the point. While these may not be the best of times and the most optimal of times in education, it's probably a good thing every once in a while to do that gut check and test our mettle on the things we say we believe in and go back and say, well, wait a minute, times are tougher. Does that mean our convictions have changed? No. If anything, it's going to strengthen them. When you talk about belonging, and I'm asking this kind of with all the wonderful ALOC people I know in the back of my mind, every one of them have a really strong sense of self and identity. And every one of them has a story where they came from a place where they had to struggle through some things to kind of firm up that identity and finally come out the other end and say, this is who I am. Those things do not define me. This is who I am today, and this is my way forward. How much is the identity work prerequisite to belonging? Do you have people that come to ALOC and you can just tell as you have that heart-to-heart conversation, let's do some identity work first. Let's make sure we've looked at the baggage and we've understood what are the true things you carry with you and what are the things that you need to divest yourself of and say, no, 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 that's not me. I know who I am. How critical is that to being able to connect in and then energize an ALOC?
Yeah, I think it's super critical. And we think about things such as social emotional learning.
Yeah,
Part of that is that, that's self-awareness. So how aware are you of yourself? At what level do you know yourself?
yeah,
And I say it's that point of, I was talking to a colleague recently about that. We all grow up and we all have these messages that
yeah,
we were told,
yep,
you know. And I remember one message was, you got to be better than, again, lots of messages we were told.
yes,
And you get to adulthood, and you're like, okay, I remember being told this, and then I internalized it, I believed it, I live
yep,
it. And then
yep,
again, like you said, you go into this phase of like, is it really true? Who told me? When did I, accept it? And I think for us, I think the self-awareness is huge. So we part of like becoming like yourself. Obviously, if you're part of a team, knowing your team, and then if you're part of an institution, getting to know your institution. So even moving out
yes,
beyond that. And so I feel like that is huge because I feel like I saw a lot of people want to talk about inclusion. But I was like, do we want to talk about exclusion too? Because we just shouldn't be jumping saying we're inclusive because there's
right,
some institutions that have been exclusive and some organizations that have been exclusive. So it's like make sure we have a full conversation. Is what we try to make sure, folks really engage fully in. And I always say, if it is all comfortable and we are all smiling, that's a problem.
right.
Literally. I'm like, at what level are we really digging deep and getting in and pulling out, the things about ourselves that we might not like or we might not want to share. And so for us is we embrace that those things that are, uncomfortable. We embrace it. We run to it. We want it because we want to learn. We want to learn.
Absolutely. And it requires ALOC to be a safe place. People come and feel it's safe to let that guard down and have those conversations. Otherwise, you can't. It won't happen. Ashley, how has that felt for you? The whole forming of identity and then being able to fully be your authentic self with ALOC.
Yeah, I think it's super critical. I actually think that we can't even get to that part of the spectrum of the work until we start to do the identity work. And I would even take it a step forward to say that ALOC is a safe space, but it's also a brave space, right? It's a
Yeah,
space where um we're doing active calling in work, right?
yeah,
When you call someone in, it's with the foundation of love and respect because you still want the relationship to continue,
right,
but you have to repair and mitigate the harm or whatever that has occurred, right? And so we are not those things are not antithetical to the work we do there. In fact, they have to be a part of the work that we do in order for us to understand it's so funny that Kevin mentioned exclusion because
yeah,
that's actually where I start.
yeah,
I start with the pain of exclusion
yeah,
because every single person, no matter who you are, can identify a time, even if you were 3 years old, where you did not belong, where you felt like you didn't fit in, where you felt like there was something about you. And that something about you are those identities, those identifiers that you're talking about.
yeah,
And recognizing kind of what that means. For me, I will say I actively have to do identity work with myself
yeah,
daily to remind myself that I'm not an imposter, right? That I
yeah,
belong here, that I earned my degree, that, it's okay for me to go by Dr. Ashley in spaces,
yes,
that it's, giving myself permission constantly.
yeah,
And also, like Kevin said, I feel that I do have to be intentional about creating a safe, a healthy level of distance so that I can engage with my community. I found myself kind of, joining the Natick Moms group, but also joining the Melanin Moms group.
yes.
I'm also joining the international, like finding spaces where I can find my people, right? My community. And not everyone looks like me, but we're like-minded, like-hearted, and we're trying to kind of move towards this in the same direction.
Powerful stuff. Um, Let me ask a different question. Everything so far has been prefaced with everything I know about all of you wonderful people. But let me ask this. So if I show up in Bangkok and experience the AIELOC conference, what is that like? What do I walk into? What's the format? What's the feel? How do you think about bringing people together in a professional learning context?
Great question. So I'm going off Vietnam, and we did obviously some changes from the
Yeah.
first one in 2024 to now. And
Oh
we're
yeah.
actually, it's interesting, we have our next, we do like once a month conference meetups. And part of it is dreaming. So dreaming, thinking about conferences you've attended, what has been your experiences,
Yes.
places and spaces where you feel like you did belong, but also places and spaces where you feel like you didn't belong. So how do we start, again, start with those questions? How do we make sure that everyone that goes to the conference in person feels feels what AIELOC means, culture of AIELOC, the purpose, the why. So we definitely, for this one, our big difference is going to be we are being purposeful about not identifying people from the West to be our keynote speakers.
Yes.
I'll tell you right now. So we've been
Yeah.
very, you know, uh, uh, being intentional around that.
Yes. Yes.
Because again, we would looked at all these different concerts and what they tend to do, and we're like, we want to be different. There's definitely music, there's joy. There, I remember our first conference, we literally had to put like Walter and Ashley to make. We put 30 minutes just because people hadn't met each other. We'd all been online.
Right. Right.
It was
Yep.
like we'd all been virtual. Everybody was like, "Oh, that's 30 seconds." We literally had this like, wait. So the agenda is, it's an agenda, but it's flexible. So we had to put in that time for just us to like be in community and say,
Yes.
"Oh my God, I'm finally meeting you."
Yes.
Um, Sessions again they're different. I mean, there's time for just dance. There's time for talk about like accountability. There's time to just pour out to dream and again wide range of topics um led by the community. The I think the one thing we talk about too is we do a student art. So the bag and the flyer was from students from the schools. We're still doing that.
Yeah.
We love that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But also making sure that the students are on the agenda. I think that's another thing too. So we did a student panel
Yeah.
last year at the start. So we want to make sure students are there, not as volunteers alone, but they're also speaking. They're
Yes.
speaking with their teacher. They're speaking because they're part of a social justice committee at their school. So it's the
Right.
heavy teachers. You won't see vendors. We don't do vendors. We want you in the community with us. We want you in sessions. We want your voice that way. We
Yeah.
want your ideas. You know what I mean? So we break away from that, go over to the booths. We're not doing that. You are invited in
Fantastic.
the space. You are part of the conference experience. So no, I'm excited for it. And then again, really connecting to the culture of the place that we're in.
Yes.
I went to a conference in Guatemala, and I remember we got to talk to a young lady who was an Afro-Guatemalan
Hmm.
who is doing social justice work. That was not a part of the conference that we went to. Like someone said it
Wow.
totally different. Oh yeah, I remember said it. And so we want to make sure that's embedded. That's part of it. So whatever's going on socially in Thailand, that's a part of the conference as well.
Amazing. Ashley, anything you'd add either from the Vietnam conference experience or what you're looking forward to for Bangkok?
I would say that I'm certainly just looking forward to like what Kevin said is just the us being us. Like
Yes.
there's the true essence of when folks from all backgrounds come together. Sometimes the agenda is underscored by letting the spirit move,
Yes.
letting dancing, moving our hips, like things that may not always feel like they belong in professional spaces, right?
Right.
But that um really are a part of who we are, and I'm looking forward to that. I always do, and I think I've been saying for the last maybe year is the only way through is going to be together,
Amen.
right? That's really the only way through. So, and I've been finding that to be very true and very powerful.
And it does sound like a great synopsis of my experience of AIELOC, honoring the energy that everyone brings to it. And that sounds like the conference. It sounds very authentic. Well, Kevin and Ashley, thank you. This was wonderful. Looking forward to sharing this interview out with educators everywhere and create more awareness for AIELOC. And looking forward to the great things your organization is going to do ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. We appreciate you and the worthy educators.